By March 1943, the jungle of Burma had already killed more Allied soldiers than German machine guns ever would in Europe. Malaria, dysentery, starvation, and exhaustion accounted for nearly 70% of Allied casualties in this theater. Entire British divisions had collapsed here in 1942. Japanese forces ruled the terrain, moving faster, living off the land, and hunting enemy patrols for sport. Now the United States was returning, but quietly. No press, no photographers. Among the men sent back into this green hell were Native American soldiers, including Apache volunteers, serving inside regular U.S. Army units and OSS teams. They were not famous. They were not labeled special, and what happened to them would be buried so deeply that history itself would struggle to recover it. The China-Burma. India Theater was never meant to be a major battlefield. It became one by failure. When Japan cut the Burma Road in 1942, China was isolated. To reopen it, the Allies had to fight through mountains, jungle, and monsoon rains that erased roads overnight. Supplies were flown over the Himalayas in missions known as the Hump, where aircraft crashed weekly. Soldiers marched for weeks without maps, resupply, or evacuation plans. Japanese forces mastered ambush warfare here, allowing disease and fear to weaken enemies before contact. To survive this environment, the U.S. Army and OSS needed men capable of enduring isolation without breaking. Native American soldiers were never recruited for mythology. They were recruited because they adapted. Apache servicemen in Burma did not arrive with stories of tradition. They arrived with habits forged by hardship. Silence, observation, endurance. Patrols moved without speaking for days. Fires were banned. Footprints were brushed away. The jungle rewarded patience and punished haste. Japanese units began reporting American patrols that struck without warning and vanished without pursuit. Intelligence officers dismissed these accounts as stress-induced exaggeration. But fear does not require confirmation. Once it spreads, it becomes a weapon of its own. Japanese jungle doctrine emphasized relentless pressure, constant movement, night attacks, psychological intimidation. But this doctrine failed against enemies who refused to be found. American long-range patrols avoided direct confrontation. They cut supply routes, destroyed communications, ambushed isolated units, and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. Prisoners were rarely taken, not from ideology but necessity. Moving captives through swamps filled with leeches and malaria was often a death sentence for both captor and captive. The brutality later associated with this front was not theatrical violence. It was the cold arithmetic of survival in terrain that offered no mercy. By late 1943, OSS Detachment 101 had built one of the most effective guerrilla networks of the war, arming and training over 10,000 Kachin fighters behind Japanese lines. American soldiers embedded with them operated weeks at a time without contact. Trust formed quickly, because mistakes were fatal. Apache and other Native American soldiers earned respect through results, not reputation. Officers noticed who detected ambushes early, who navigated without landmarks, who remained calm under exhaustion. None of this appeared in headlines. Official reports reduced it to grid references and casualty figures. In 1944, the war in Burma intensified dramatically. Japan launched massive offensives at Imphal and Kohima, attempting to destroy Allied supply hubs. Behind Japanese lines, American and guerrilla patrols increased sabotage operations. Supply dumps burned, messengers vanished. Entire Japanese units began abandoning camps without engagement. Diaries recovered after the war described a growing fear of invisible Americans who attacked without warning. Whether accurate or exaggerated no longer mattered. Morale collapsed as paranoia spread. Soldiers stopped sleeping. Jungle shadows became enemies. There was never an Apache unit. This fact is essential. These men were absorbed into standard formations, Merrill's marauders, OSS teams, infantry patrols. Their ethnicity was irrelevant to paperwork. Their survival rates were not. When patrols succeeded, credit went to units. When they failed, names disappeared into casualty lists. The jungle erased identity first. History followed. By the time victory arrived, few outside the theater understood what had been fought for or how. Modern retellings often exaggerate brutality, turning survival into spectacle. The truth is harsher and quieter. Wounded soldiers could rarely be evacuated. A broken leg could be fatal. Ammunition was rationed carefully. Hunger shaped every decision. Killing was not celebrated, it was endured. Many veterans later described carrying guilt for actions taken when no alternative existed. The jungle did not allow moral clarity. It only allowed choices between bad and worse. Those choices haunted survivors long after the war ended. By early 1945, Japanese forces in Burma were collapsing under starvation and constant harassment. Of the estimated 85,000 Japanese deaths in the Burma campaign, most were caused not by combat, but by disease and hunger. Allied losses exceeded 36,000 dead. Guerrilla pressure ensured Japanese units could not regroup or retreat effectively. Fear of unseen patrols pinned divisions in place. War had become psychological. Victory was achieved not through spectacle, but erosion. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, the Jungle War ended without ceremony. Patrols emerged thinner, older, changed. Reports were written, units disbanded, files were archived. Europe claimed the spotlight. Normandy, Bastogne, Berlin. Burma vanished from public consciousness almost immediately. There were no victory parades for jungle fighters, no films, no monuments. Native American veterans returned home quietly. Many faced discrimination despite their service. Benefits were delayed or denied. Few spoke of Burma. Silence became protection, a way to move forward without reopening wounds no one wanted to understand. Their stories survived only in fragments, letters, interviews, fading memories. Decades later, myths filled the silence. Online stories exaggerated savagery and mysticism. But the truth is more human and more painful. These men were not legends. They were soldiers placed in terrain that demanded everything and gave nothing back. Their effectiveness came from discipline, not brutality. More than 44,000 Native Americans served in World War II, a higher per capita rate than any other group in the United States. They fought in Europe, the Pacific, the air, and the sea. Some disappeared into jungles that history forgot to remember. Japan did not fear Apaches by name. It feared what it could not see. The jungle erased uniforms, ranks, and identities. It turned warfare into whispers and movement into menace. That fear not myth was the real weapon. History often hides what does not fit clean narratives. The Burma campaign offered no iconic photographs, no symbolic moments, only endurance. And endurance rarely sells. The real brutality of this war was not the jungle itself. It was the silence that followed. And in that silence, men who carried the war on their backs were nearly erased from memory.